Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the PhD podcast. Today with Andrew Brooke. Andy has nearly 20 years in the cycling industry, working in the bike fitting, education, and brand consulting. He led biomechanics at a top motion capture company, helped build global training programs, and founded the International Bike Fitting Institute to raise science-based standards and much more. Andy, welcome. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Thanks a lot. Can you tell us where you're at and what you've been up to?
Yeah, so currently I'm in Spain. We moved here about 3 years ago, 3.5 coming up to. I'm currently working in mentoring bike fitting. I'm consulting with some cycling brands, and I've just launched a company called Aidos, which is a kind of business operating system for bike fitters, trying to make admin easier and make tracking outcomes a lot simpler and just generally improve the service that fitters can offer.
Right. And the always in cycling, how's that started?
So I didn't start off in cycling. I did a degree in economics and then a master's in international political economy. Then got a job that was moderately related to those two and absolutely hated it. So lasted about 3 months and then decided that it was time to find something that I was passionate about. So I started working at British Cycling in sport development, which is just kind of an admin role to support the clubs across the UK. And then moved over to Spain for a year to work as a guide and mechanic on cycling holidays. And then when I moved back to the UK, I was kind of looking around for things I could do that got me back into cycling. And I'd always had an interest in fit because it kind of made sense to me. It was logic, it was numbers, it was patterns. I went down to visit a guy in Bristol at a company called Bike Science, and he was looking for franchisees at that time and kind of demonstrated the retool system to me. This would have been 2010, I think. I was hooked. It was, the exact kind of thing I wanted to do. And from there, just kept trying to learn, kept trying to improve. And I think I've done 16 different bike fitting courses now and a master's degree and 6 years of a part-time PhD as well. So there's been a lot of education along the way.
Right. Speaking about the your master's degree and how that helped with your the bike fitting.
Yeah. So I think it's been really useful, having that balance between like vocational training, which is your typical bike fitting course, and then the academic training that you would do through universities. Because there's certain things that I think we don't, or historically we haven't taught very well, like anatomy, like pure biomechanics, those concepts of torque angle relationship curves and all that kind of stuff that we should know as bike fitters because it explains what we do and how we do it. So having that traditional academic background as well really helps fill in some of those gaps.
So the let's go briefly forward. When you started with IBFI, what was the goal behind it? Why did you start it?
So I kind of realized that there were a lot of clients out there who were being drawn into kind of marketing and advertising of some of these big fit companies and seeking a fitter based on the name on their camera or, whatever technology they were using instead of the actual training of the fitter that was using that equipment. So really the equipment it's like a tape measure, it's a tool. You use it the right way, you get good answers. You use it the wrong way, you get bad answers. So I wanted to create something that while I was at British Cycling, I was working on a certification program for cycling clubs. And I thought we could bring over a similar model to bike fitting and kind of self-regulate. So it was all very transparent. We had credits associated with the number of courses that you do. And we were trying to identify the fitters that had done more training or had experiences that were aligned with being, a well-rounded fitter. So created this system, had a bit of a steering committee of senior fitters across the industry that helped guide the process. And basically, I kind of come up with some ideas. I'd pitch it to that committee, and if I got a majority supporting it, that would kind of pass, and we'd continue with it. If I didn't get it, then I'd take back their feedback, I'd make adjustments, and go back with some changes. So it was kind of a way of helping fitters sort of say, yes, I'm a good level fitter. I know what I'm talking about, and help just end users, cyclists, identify who were actual good fitters as well. The reason we had, rather than just having a binary kind of certified or not certified, I went with this kind of levels approach where the idea behind that was to try and encourage people to continue developing and continue their education. Because if you had another fitter across town who was a level higher than you, in theory, that should incentivize you to go off, do more courses, and step up to that same level so that you can show that you're just as good as that person across town. So yeah, that was kind of the main reason. I think there's other benefits to it as well. I think, with if we look now, because the IBFI has been going for over 10 years now, but if we look at the market as it is now, with AI, with automation, I think there's a lot of elements that a bike fitter does that could be replaced. There's certain elements that are going to be much more difficult to replace, and if we don't reach a level of education and a level of quality service that makes us harder to replace, then we're kind of doing their job for them and just saying, yeah, you know what, we're not very good at our jobs, and we're easy to replace. Knock yourselves out. So I think it's really important to continue your education, continue trying to be as good as you can be, basically.
Great. Touch little bit on the future of bike fitting, and bringing to the present. People nowadays, they always want to rush adapting to the near bike or returning to cycling. What would you say that what bike fitting isn't?
What isn't? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing for me is that it's not a single visit. So, you hear fitters talk about, it's a process, not an event. I think that's a great phrase. I can't remember who first said it. It might have been one of the Cycle Fit guys down in London when they were doing their ICS conferences. But it's a lot of cyclists think that they go to a bike fitter. If they don't fix your problem straight away, then they go to another bike fitter because that bike fitter wasn't good enough. They didn't solve the issue. But in reality, it all comes down to decision making, and kind of ties in nicely with why I started the mentoring and Aidos. The outcome doesn't actually change whether or not a decision was good. So, what you have to do as a fitter is be consistent with your application of logic, of scientific principles. So you have to play the odds. It's the same as a doctor. If somebody presents with a cough and certain symptoms, the first thing they're going to do is try and treat asthma rather than think that it's some rare autoimmune disease or something, tropical flu or something. You play the odds. You treat the most likely thing first, or at least you test for those things first. And that's what we have to do as fitters. So just because it's not the most likely thing, that doesn't mean we did a bad job or we made a bad decision. It means that we ruled something out, and that's a good step forwards. So I think the more we can get that message across to clients that a bike fit isn't a single event, but a process, the more likely we can get clients coming back when that first most likely intervention doesn't work. And then it lets us try the second most likely thing and hopefully help a lot more clients. But if they do just go to another fitter, then maybe that fitter doesn't know what we tried during the first session. So they might try the same thing. You have to treat it as a process, because otherwise you lose so much quality data, so much information that helps you make those decisions. Because finding something that doesn't work is as useful as finding something that does, because it provides more information. Yeah. That's helping you get to the end result.
So no secret sauce.
No, exactly. I think there's historically, fit education has always been kind of like, I've got this amazing approach and you can only learn it by coming on this course with me, and nobody else teaches it the way I teach it. And as I said earlier, I've done 16 courses. I've done up to 3 levels with, I think, possibly 3 different providers. And what you realize when you kind of go into that level of detail is that predominantly they teach the same thing or very similar things with a slightly different approach. So there is no secret sauce. There's a lot of commonality in what we do and how we do it. And I think it's really important. And that's one of the reasons the IBFI's common syllabus is so important. Actually, you can't change how you interpret anatomy. You know, the muscles are the muscles. They connect where they connect. They do the job they do. Same with biomechanics. You can't take an entire sort of scientific sports science subject and say, no, I'm going to ignore it and teach something completely different that is contradictory to that. So because these two big principles, the anatomy and biomechanics, are so common to everything we do, actually the courses should be a lot more aligned. Yes, there's different ways of achieving outcomes, and different ways of kind of assessing the rider and that kind of thing. But ultimately, what we're trying to achieve is the same thing: a stable, powerful rider that, you know, has a low risk of injury and is pretty comfortable. So yeah, that's really important in education. I think just kind of get rid of that concept of this secret sauce, this you know, you've got to come and learn from me. And the other thing with the syllabus was that if you do a level 1 course with one provider, then that ticks off your level 1 courses. So you can do a level 2 course with another provider and your previous learning has already been recognized. Where, you know, I said I've done 3 different levels with 3 different providers. The first one was with Retool, but the next provider I went to made me go back and do a level 1 course because they said, you know, oh, you didn't learn it the way that we teach it and you have to go back and do it. And so there was a huge disadvantage to learning in bike fitting because that first course you do has a huge return on investment because you go from not being a fitter and not being able to charge anything to being a fitter and being able to charge the going rate for bike fits. Your second course only makes you slightly better at what you do. It doesn't open up a new client base. It doesn't allow you to charge more money in most cases. So, you know, I think if like me, you have just that drive to learn and that desire to continually improve, great, you go off and do courses. But most people that approach it from a business perspective will just see it as, well, I've got my course. That's my big return on investment. The next course is just so expensive and not really worth doing. So a lot of fitters kind of plateau. They reach this mediocre level. They don't see the value in carrying on and improving. And that's the difficulty with the industry. And I think the common syllabus hopefully takes that away because you do the level 1 course, then the level 2, then the level 3, and it's just natural progression. And when I was kind of pulling all of that together, I tried to think about how good I was as a fitter in those early years and try and create at least the level 1 and 2 courses. We when I was teaching them with Cyclologic, we allowed people to do them back to back. And I think a lot of the people that came off those courses, it was 6 days of in-person learning and then some online material as well. Before they'd even done the online element, I think they were about as good, if not better, than I was after 3 years of fitting. And that was after 6 days. And I think that kind of speaks volumes about the approach, the courses, the way we were teaching them. And yeah, that's always got to be the goal, to help people get as good as they can be as quickly as possible so that they can actually offer a good service to their clients.
Thanks. Walk us through your body forces bike logic. What is it?
Okay, so my approach to fitting and what I teach in my mentoring is that bike fit is kind of 3 important things. So the first one is variables. So if you understand everything that could cause that issue, you have a better chance of solving that issue. For example, so you talk about patellofemoral pain, which is common in cycling. It could be because the seat's too low. It could be because the cranks are too long. It could be to do with where the force is actually applied through the pedal stroke. So they engage that pedal stroke too soon. But essentially, the mechanism behind all of those is that you're applying force through the patella at a point where the knee is significantly flexed. So If you raise the seat height, you reduce the amount of knee flexion. If you shorten the crank, you reduce the knee flexion. But also you can just slightly delay the onset of force through the pedal stroke. And again, force production occurs at a point where the knee flexion angle is more open. Um, so that's the thing. You have to identify the variables, and then you need to understand the mechanism behind it. Because if you don't understand the mechanism, you can't really make an intervention that's gonna fix it if you don't know why it's happening in the first place. And then the third piece of the puzzle for me is forces, and that's the forces acting on the body through gravity and reaction forces through the bike, but also the forces you're creating and putting into the bike. If you can balance those, you create a sustainable position. If you don't understand them, then I think you really struggle to create something that the rider can sustain over long periods.
And the mentoring, who is that for?
So it's for any fitter, really. I think a lot of fitters who feel like maybe they've stagnated for a little while. It can be early career fitters who just want the quickest path to being a competent or even good bike fitter, or it can be really experienced fitters who have a lot of training in their background, but maybe they feel like they've not pushed themselves in a while. And so we can take a couple of different approaches with it. We can just let the mentoring student kind of guide that and say, what don't you feel confident on, and we'll go through that and we'll talk through everything. I always try to do it in a way that's sort of asking questions and teasing out the answer from the fitter, because what I want to teach them is how to think. I don't want to teach them to repeat what I tell them, because I can get them moderately good much more quickly if they just repeat exactly what I do or what I tell them. But if what I want them to do is really for the mentoring to be a 1 or 2 year thing, where after that they're good to go on their own. They can solve problems. They can think everything through logically. So it's important to teach them how to do that. It's not just a case of, in this case I do that, in that case I do this, because that doesn't really train fitters. That trains like system operators, like if X then Y, which is one of my big frustrations with bike fitting. And I think as an industry, even education, we kind of build on top of each other these little blocks of, well, if I see this, then I do that, and if I see that, then I do this, and then you collect together enough of those and you think that you know what you're talking about. But actually, the second element of the mentoring is a full process review. So, you come to me, and then over a series of a few months, a few different calls, we go through each element of the fit and go, okay, well, what questions do you ask in your pre-fit interview? Why do you ask those questions? What do you use the answers for? And just try to really strictly link everything that they do pre-fit to on-bike stuff. Because if you're not doing that, maybe you're wasting time. Maybe you're doing things that you don't need to do. I did something similar with a guy that I'm mentoring last week, and we kind of talked through his physical assessment and looked at each exercise and said, okay, well, when you see that, what does it change about your fit? And there was one particular exercise where he was like, well, actually nothing. Okay, well, then the exercise then. You're not screening anyone for anything if it doesn't impact your fit decision making process. And we can apply that to the whole fit. The pre-fit interview, the physical assessment, pedal foot interface, insoles, cleat position, then saddle position, saddle choice, where we set the handlebars, all those kinds of things. If you really want to be a good quality fitter, you should be able to defend your approach in every single case. So, I can play devil's advocate, and even if you do the same thing that I do, I can still take the other side and argue with you about, well, don't you think it might be better to do this instead of that? Or why don't you do it this way? And I think when your assumptions are challenged and when your process is challenged, it really makes you reassess and think, and hopefully you come out the other end of it going, do you know what? Yeah, these elements are right. I'm really happy with my approach. I think I'm doing exactly the right thing. And maybe you identify a couple of areas where you could improve, you could be better, but at least going through that process helps you identify your strengths and your weaknesses. Until you do that, you don't know how you can improve.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm pretty sure someone, right now listening and watching this, thinking about, your mentoring work, they're gonna agree with me. Especially nowadays, there's not only, let's say, I would say in the last 10 years, there's a sort of like a push from the commercial side of especially in the stores, as a bike fit being a part of the machine, the business. So like the more the merrier, and that it's pushing or creating a bad fame, I guess. So what are you doing with the consulting and mentoring? I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really important, and I agree entirely. I think there were some big brands in fitting that tried to simplify things because, and I can definitely see it from both sides. I can see
Yeah,
what
sure.
they're trying to do is add an element of individualization to the sales process, whether it's for saddles, insoles, shoes, whatever, and as a result get happier clients. That makes a lot of sense. But I think when you take those oversimplifications and apply them to the whole breadth of bike fitting, then you end up with bad end results, because when you stack on top of each other all these oversimplifications, you don't know what to do when they conflict, or when you can't get two of them to be true at the same time. So I think understanding fit and why we do what we do, why we're looking for the things that we're looking for, helps you prioritize during the fit. If I can't necessarily get that, then I'm fine as long as I've still got this other thing.
Shall we go just a little quick on the high performance side of it that end up attracting a lot of people? Because nowadays, especially in road cycling, you get integrated handlebars and stems, and contrary to, let's say, again, 6 years ago, when everyone else was riding upside down in tri bikes, everything is getting taller. Everyone is going behind aero bars. How do you think about, in this specific context of going aero versus durability on the bike? Because everyone looks at the pros, let's say, picture images, and wants emulate that. It's normal.
Yeah. So I'll kind of bring it back to forces, because I think it's really important to understand why a pro looks like they do and why I look like I do on a bike, and they're not the same. So it's about balancing those forces. If a pro is putting out, let's say they've got an FTP somewhere around 400 watts, they're climbing at 350, somewhere around there, then actually the power that they put into the pedal is so much greater than it is for me, which might be like half that. So the reaction force from the pedal is half of what it is for a pro. And then on the flip side, you're trying to balance a point where their torso is toppling forwards, because you are leaning forwards and therefore putting weight into the bars. My torso, probably, even though I'm not a super tall guy, I'm still carrying a few extra pounds, and I'm heavier than a pro. So I've got less reaction force keeping me up and keeping me back in the seat, but I've got more weight toppling forwards and going into the handlebars. So to balance that means that my bars have to be closer to me. They have to be higher up. If I wanted to get aero, I've got to earn that aero. I can't just replicate the position and think that I can achieve it. I've got to get to a point where my power output is higher, where the weight balance is better. So it's not just a case of making me look like a pro. I've got to be able to function like a pro as well. So we get as close as we can for each athlete, but ultimately that pro's position is the same as an average athlete's position from a perspective of balancing the forces. It's just that the forces are different. And so you're never going to look the same because those forces are completely off the charts for a pro compared to us.
Oh, that's brilliant. I wish I had these explanations a few times. Thanks. I'm just getting a free mentoring. Thanks. Um, I'm very excited to talk about young Aidos, but just before that, because one of the goals of the PhD podcast is not only bring people that achieve, the highest level in their, let's say, their jobs or education, whatever field they are, like you. It's to encourage people that, like you said, like starting, aspiring bike fitters. Let's say someone starting, their journey in bike fitting, like, becoming a bike fitting in the next 1 or 2 years, what their learning path should look like.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think there's a lot of ways that you can approach fitting, and you can definitely kind of get drawn into the drinking the Kool-Aid of these big brands who want to sort of guide you through their process. I definitely think the IBFI's common syllabus is a great way to do it. It's a great approach. There's flexibility within there. So some education providers teaching in line with that system are going to use technology, and some are going to be doing things by eye, and some are going to be getting rider feedback and using other principles. So you can kind of tailor that to your approach as well. You don't need to do this one size fits all. The concepts I kind of mentioned earlier, we're still looking for the same things. Like there's lots of ways that you can identify a seat that's too high, but commonly, especially at the entry level courses, we teach 4 things. And you can identify those with technology, but you can identify them by eye as well. It might just take a little bit longer to train your eye to spot them. So tech is an easy way to get there quicker in a lot of cases. But I think if you're fully starting out, you need to decide what kind of fitter you want to be, and then choose the course that best aligns with that. So if you like tech, and I do, I don't let it make decisions for me, but I like being able to be repeatable with it. I like being able to measure things. I like knowing exactly what I've changed and what's happened as a result of those changes. And I think I can spot certain things visually that the tech can't see. So there's always a balance between the two. But for me, I think a new fitter starting out, tech allows them to take that big step quicker. But there's no substitute for training your eye. It just means if you're using tech in the short term, you can buffer that time. You can spend a year or 2 using tech and constantly looking at the rider while you're doing that, and then you can train your eye while it's happening. So if you want to be like a tech fitter who uses motion capture, pressure mapping, that kind of thing, you find an education provider who teaches that, like Cyclologic, like the courses I used to run in Scottsdale, Arizona. If you want to go the other route and look at not using tech and what you can do by eye, then there are great education providers like Talk Cycling over in Bath in the UK who take a different approach with that as well. So find the course that best matches the approach that you want to take. Ideally, IBFI syllabus aligned, because it makes certification easier, but also it means that you're definitely ticking off at least the minimum content that's required for those courses.
Great. I'm level 2, but by the way.
Great. Good job.
Thanks. And if for cyclists, people that never done a bike fitting before, what are the 3 questions they must ask before booking a fit?
Okay, so I think I'd start off asking like what training the fitter has done. So have they done multiple courses, firstly, and then secondly, have they trained with multiple providers? Because that's going to fill in some gaps. I think I said I've done 16 courses. There's not a single course I've been on where I haven't learned something, and that's even after doing a dozen courses and having to go back and start at level 1 again with another provider, there was still something I learned on that level 1 course because it was a different approach to mine. So you can always learn things by visiting different providers. So as a cyclist, I would want to know that my fitter has not just done like 3 courses with the same provider, because there might be gaps, there might be holes in that course that other courses would fill in. So I'd like to know that they've been to at least 2 different course providers. The second question I'd ask, and you can often tease this out from social media, especially Instagram, the number of bike fitters I see where they're sharing pictures before and after, and the bike's up against the wall, or the back of the bike is up against the wall. Straight away, that's a red flag for me. If you can't see the other side, if you can't see the rider from the rear, you're not doing a full fit. It doesn't matter what system you use. It doesn't matter if you manage to convince yourself and your clients that by looking at one side and having pressure mapping on the seat, you can still get that asymmetry piece from the saddle, but you can't see what the other leg's doing, not accurately. So, you can't tell when things are structural, functional. I think there's a lot of pieces that you're missing. So it's not even like you're doing half a fit by looking at one side. I think you're doing about a quarter of a fit, because another quarter comes from the other side, and another quarter comes from the back, and then the final quarter comes from actually piecing the whole thing together. If you can't piece everything together, you're missing a huge chunk. So that's my big red flag. Don't visit fitters where the bike's against the wall. Don't visit them where the bike is the back of the bike is against the wall, like the trainer. The third one, I don't know. I think I'd like to know that they have experience in the specific type of riding that I do. So, it's great seeing fitters talk about, this pro came in to visit me. Okay, I'm not a pro. What experience do you have with people like me that are a bit too heavy, not as powerful as they'd like to be, don't ride as much as they want, not as fit? That's if that's your expertise, I'm more interested than fitting pros. Because actually, I think with a lot of pros, the fitting process becomes a bit simpler because there's a self-selection element within professional cycling where if you get injuries, then you don't make it to the pro level, because every time you get really fit, your body can't handle the training load and it breaks on you. So there's this kind of self-selection thing where actually pro cyclists are pretty robust athletes, and they're probably not coming to you with the niggles and the discomfort that your average sedentary athlete, part-time cyclist is. So I spend, I don't know how many hours at a desk or sat on a sofa watching TV,
Several,
but yeah, I dread to think how many per week. So my body adapts to what it does the most, or what puts the most load on it. And actually, because I sit so much, I get really tight hip flexors. So I'm not as flexible as a pro. I'm not as powerful as a pro. I think I'd want to know that the person I'm working with on my position is going to be a specialist in lazy, sedentary, broken bodies with ailments from 20
normal
plus
people.
years of. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So actually, as a fitter, I find normal people more interesting to work with, because they're often more challenging. The most interesting fits you look back on through your career are the ones where there was, a guy who had a spinal surgery where he was in such a bad accident that they actually, his vertebrae kind of cracked so badly that the one above it kind of dropped inside. So they had to kind of pull it back out and then take out ribs and create a frame for his vertebrae to fuse together and stay rigid. And you're working with him, and it's like, you're going through the standard discussion of when do you feel pain, and he's like, well, always. It's just a scale. So with him, you're trying to decrease pain, but you're never going to get to zero. Where with another athlete, they might come in at zero and just be wanting to know that it's not going to cause them any issues in the future. So the real appeal for Bike Fit with me is that everybody's different. It's a different case. Even if they present with the same issues, there can be different causes, and it's that variety that just keeps it interesting, keeps it challenging, and makes me want to continue learning, keep improving.
Is that why you do the whole your whole job around bike fitting, because it changes every time, you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I did this little kind of course thing with Sport England, where they kind of they pull together, physiotherapists, coaches, biomechanists, and all these different professions, and have this sort of day where they do a personality test on you, and they go through some like principles of problem solving and that kind of thing, just to almost pre-train you in the hope that maybe one day the better ones amongst that group will apply for jobs with them, and they'll be better able to select the best candidates. But anyway, as part of this course, this personality test found that my driving factor is helping people. So I really enjoy that. And at the end of the course, we all split off into our groups. So the physiotherapists went over there and the biomechanists went into a different room. And I'm sat in this room with a bunch of biomechanists, and they all said, "Oh, so what group did you get put in with that personality test?" And they were all some group that basically meant that they love numbers and they like problem solving. And I was the only person in the room who liked helping people. And I think that was the thing that drew me to fit. I still like problem solving and numbers and logic and patterns and all that kind of stuff. But being able to combine that with helping people just made it such an appealing profession. And the variety, obviously, you're not going to get bored with it because everything's
Yeah,
different.
daily, luckily. Getting close to the exciting part of our conversation, which is Aidos. And briefly before that, for brands, like the cycling industry, it's on a, let's say, roller coaster for the last, 4 or 5 years. What are the brands you reckon they're missing about real humans on bikes?
So I think, obviously, you mentioned integrated handlebars earlier on, and having positions that are difficult to adjust makes life really difficult, not just for bike fitters but for cyclists as well.
Indeed, yeah.
Because our bodies alter over time, and it can either be through aging, or it can be through maybe I had to drive back to the UK, which we do occasionally. It's easier to take the dog in the car than it is on a plane. So we drive great distances. It takes like 3 days to get there, and then 3 days back. If it's only a week, then 6 days of traveling over the course of a week and a half is quite a lot. So my body might have adapted to the fact that I've spent so long driving, and that fatigue, because I find driving quite tiring as well, because you're constantly trying to be alert to everything that's cutting you up and pulling out on you and stuff. So my body's going to adapt to that, and then if I had a fit straight after, that's going to look completely different to if I'd had a fit after a week off work of like massages and yoga and stretching, and they're going to be completely different positions. So I think I'd like to see bikes have a bit more adjustability, to the point where riders can actually maybe tweak things on a short-term basis. So, if I know that my body's taken a bit of a beating over the last few weeks, and I'm a bit stiffer than I normally would be, I'd still like to be able to drop a spacer under the stem and raise up that front end. I can't do that with bikes at the moment, because with most bikes, because of the way that the stem clamps on the steerer, because of the design of the spacer and the internal cable routing and all that kind of stuff, it often makes it impossible to make those short-term adaptations, and you just kind of go, well, okay, I'll stick at it, be uncomfortable for a few weeks, and then it'll all come good and shake out, hopefully. But it would be nice to be able to have that bit more adjustability, especially on front ends. I think that would be great.
Lovely. Aidos. Now, why did you build it
Yeah.
and what
So
it is?
yeah. So what is it first? I think helps answer
Exactly.
why I built it. So it started off as being this idea of, well, we don't track outcomes very well in our industry. We always do a pre-fit interview, and we try to tease out, what discomfort do you have, what's your rider history, what injuries have you had, all that kind of stuff. But if we don't kind of put numbers on that, so if we don't say, right, you've got saddle discomfort, okay, what's the severity score on a scale of 1 to 7? When does it trigger in minutes? So is it after half an hour? Is it 90 minutes? Put a number on it. Then if we look 4 weeks later after the appointment, do those scores improve? If the severity's gone down from like a 5 out of 7 to a 3 out of 7, then you've made an improvement. If the onset time goes from being after only 30 minutes to being after 60 minutes, then actually the severity's dropped and it takes longer for it to happen. So that's an improvement. Where if all you're doing is kind of saying they have saddle pain, then the only improvement you can see is if the saddle pain completely disappears, which is fine, and good, and what we should be targeting. But at the same time, things like knee pain, where the issue might be ligament or tendon, where blood flow is notoriously poor and recovery times are quite long, I still want to know if I've made any improvement, or whether it's still exactly as it was. Because if it comes on later, if the severity isn't quite as high, then I've made improvements, and hopefully with more time, those tendons and ligaments and what have you are going to heal better, and those scores are going to continue to improve. So I think it's putting numbers on things, having enough people through that process where you can start to see meaningful averages. So, if you've got 100 clients, then maybe only 10 of them have knee pain. And then, is that a big enough sample size, because there's so many different types of knee pain, to know what intervention you should make when the client has knee pain? Well, in theory, you might want to do different things depending on what kind of knee pain it is. If it's medial knee pain, you might want to look at an insole. If it's patellofemoral pain, you might want to look at seat height or crank length. So Aidos was kind of created out of this idea of how do we track things to such an extent that we can really say for sure, or at least put probabilities in place. So if I have 100 users of Aidos and they do 200 fits each per year, we're at 20,000 clients being put through that system. Now, providing they all opt in, because obviously it's an opt-in thing. We don't just use everybody's data without their permission. Everybody who opts in, we can look at them and then start pulling through, right, everybody with patellofemoral pain. And then Aidos tracks the interventions that you make. So if you change crank length, you can write that in there. If you change seat height, you can say, right, seat went up 10 mil, back 5 mil, whatever it is. And you can put on insoles and all that kind of stuff. So we get to a point where we can say, okay, all of these clients have patellofemoral pain. These interventions were done across those clients. Of those clients, this number experienced a significant improvement in those severity scores, and these interventions correlate the best with a positive outcome. Then we can start to put numbers on things and say, right, when you see someone with patellofemoral pain, this is the most likely first thing that you should try. And if that doesn't work, this is the second most likely thing. But if we get to a point where the data sets are really huge, we can start using machine learning algorithms to really drill down into like secondary factors that we might not consider. Because as a bike fitter, sorry, that's my dog barking in the background.
That's fine.
As a bike fitter, I'm looking at things that I can logically explain. So I can explain why patellofemoral pain can be caused by crank length and seat height. So they're the two things that I'm going to look at. I can't necessarily draw as straight a line between that and use of insoles or cleat position or changing saddle. But maybe the machine learning algorithm can pick out these patterns that say, actually, you've got an 80% chance of correcting it if you shorten crank length and slightly increase seat height, but you've got a 95% chance if you do that and put an insole in. And we just won't know unless we can get enough data to really analyze it. So that was kind of part of Aidos. It was like this idea of outcome tracking and how do we get to a point where we can really inform decision making so that we know we're doing the right thing. And then the first few people I showed it to kind of said, oh, it'd be great if it could do this. And another one said it'd be great if it could do that. And it kind of grew. So we went from these kind of pre-fit form and post-fit form with some metrics comparing the two to then a booking system, because having a booking system enables some of the forms to be automated because the database then knows what time the appointment was and all that kind of thing. And therefore what date 4 weeks afterwards is. And then it can trigger that follow-up email. But also we then thought, well, there are booking systems available currently that allow you to process payments. So we needed to add that. Independent fitters don't necessarily have stock management systems or true point of sale. So we kind of expanded that ability to take payment to also take track stock for all the things that you might sell. And then we added a CRM element, which enables people to track clients better, but also to contact them better. So, you can use those tags that I was talking about earlier to identify everyone who has, saddle discomfort, and then you can go through your history and look at all the fits you've done where they've had saddle discomfort. But you can also filter and trigger emails based on certain things, like, for example, if you do sell bikes, you have retail as well, or shoes, you can actually filter your clients based on handlebar XY coordinates that you measure at the end of the fit, and then say, okay, show me everyone with these handlebar XY coordinates with a plus minus of the buffer that you set in the system. And then it's going to pull through every client of yours that you've ever fit who's going to fit on that bike that you need to sell at the end of the year. So instead of just trying to blanket email everyone and say, I've got this 2024 model bike that I need to sell. It's got 30% off. And then people go, oh, that's really good. Does it fit me? And then you look at their fit data. No, sorry. and then, on to the next one. Does it fit me? No, sorry. And you're spending so much time manually checking all of these fits that actually you're better off just targeting the email to the people that it's going to fit. And then you can say, you're receiving this email because this bike fits you. If you want to know more about it, get in touch. Same with shoes and shoe size, and being able to sort of filter that out and target clients the right way. So there's a piece of around improving communication with the client, and then there's a piece around improving your ability to still take a fit first approach to retail, because that's the difficulty that I think a lot of stores have, retail stores. They look at the rider, they know the rider needs a 54, but they've got a 56, and they need to shift it and liquidate that stock. So all of a sudden, you're a 56 with no spacers and a shorter stem. And the reality is you're not a 56, you're a 54. Hopefully, if we can make it easier for fitters to target the right clients and say this bike fits you, we can still have those sale bikes. We can still turn them over quickly, but we can retain our fit first approach. So that's kind of where Aidos is now. But as an overarching kind of principle, Aidos flips the whole concept of data on its head. So you as the fitter don't own the data, the client owns the data. And then the client can take the data with them for their next fit. If it happens to be with somebody else, if they move across the country, they can take all of that fit history with them and say, this is what we did, this is why we did it, this worked or didn't work or whatever. Or the other way around, clients come to you from other fitters and bring that fit history, or you just build that relationship over time with a client and track their position over 2, 3, 4, 5 years much, much more easily, because it's all pulled up straight away as soon as you open that client in the system. But the client can log in as soon as they've left your fit studio. So let's say at the end of your fit, you type in the intervention log. So you say, seat went up 5 mil, backwards 3 mil, all those kinds of changes. You hit save. You measure the bike, you type in all of that, you hit save. As soon as you've saved it, the client can log in to their dashboard, click on the session and view it straight away. There's no need for you to produce a report to email it through. You can still do that, but you can actually save the report as a file in Aidos as well. So then, the client logs in, they've got everything that happened in that session, why it happened, what the outcome was with the follow-up. There's even, because you can process the payments, it even pulls through exactly what they bought during that session. So if you put in some wedges, it'll tell you how many wedges you put in. And if you bought a shoe, it'll tell you the exact model and size. So it allows them to track their fit journey as well. And hopefully comes back to that piece I talked about earlier, where it gets them away from this fit as an event thing and shows that fit is a process and something that you continue to work towards. Because that historical data is super important to help inform future decisions.
At the end of the day, it's helping not only fitters and riders and brands as well, right? Because you gotta have. Because I didn't know the end customer part, like the client part. I thought that was probably mainly for bike fitters.
Yeah, so it's the bike fitters that sort of purchase the software, if you like, and use it. But the value add to their client is that they have this record for life of what happened during the session, and then the client can track it just as well as the fitter can track it. So it makes everybody's life easier, but the client can share it with other fitters if they move, and they don't just lose all of that fit data. I guess it's like different medical systems across the world. You look at the UK, we have the National Health System, and it's no matter which doctor I go to, they're accessing the same database, so they can always see my medical history. And I guess it's a little step towards that. You still want to see the same doctor because you build up a knowledge and a rapport, but you want them to know, if you've had to see another doctor elsewhere, that they can still access that information. And that's what Aidos allows you to do. It's your data. You take it with you wherever you want. But as fitters, we shouldn't see that as kind of a negative or a risk that these clients are gonna leave us, because they could do that anyway, whether they have their data or not. But it gives you an incentive to build that relationship, to offer better customer service, because then you're going to be the one that's working with them over time and showing them that journey. So if they're coming in for their third bike fit in sort of 3-5 years, whatever, you can show them back through that journey really, really quickly and easily, and say, okay, that first fit, this is what went wrong. But also, I think you can go a level deeper and say, okay, I mentioned there's 4 things that we commonly teach that identify a seat being too high. Well, let's say one of them is pointing your toes down excessively relative to a seat that was ever so slightly lower. So the mechanism behind that is that the hamstrings are a little bit tight, the range of motion is not great. So it reaches a point where the hamstrings don't want the knee to extend further. So the only way it can get around the bottom of the pedal stroke is by pointing the toes down further. So that shows that the seat's gone a bit too high, and you're going to nudge that back down again. But what you could do is track what trigger shows that for that client when a seat goes too high. So you can say, okay, well, we know that your seat goes too high because your hamstrings don't like it, and this is how it presents. So if you ever feel like you're getting quite toey, that might be that your hamstrings have got even tighter, and we need to go even lower on the seat, or you need to come back and have a look at things. But knowing that, they might go away and do the opposite. They might go away and do loads of hamstring flexibility work, and then that stops being the trigger that shows when the seat's too high. And next time you go through the process with them, something else presents, like saddle instability and rocking and rolling over the seats. I think if you track this, you can show maybe consistent patterns. You can show patterns that have changed, and that's really what this is about. It's about showing the journey of the fit and allowing the client to really understand why you've made different decisions this time to what you made last time.
Cool. Does Aidos talk to the current bike fitting systems, or is it like a different approach? Like you fill in the blanks, or does it goes like on a, let's say, an integration?
Yeah. So Aidos is trying to be like the admin support that we don't currently have. So my approach with it is to try and fill in as many gaps as possible, because yeah, all right, there are certain systems that will allow you to measure the bike, and we could partner with those technologies and import that into our database so that it is integrated. But we're not trying to do the actual during fit element. So we're not competing with motion capture companies. We're not competing with pressure mapping companies, IMUs, anything like that. We're not even kind of guiding your by eye fitters who are making adjustments based on what they see. That's not our area. What we're trying to do is before fit, after fit, track everything, and just keep really good notes for you. But I would love to get to a point, and we're kind of in discussions with tech brands at the moment where we could partially at least automate that report writing process. So I mentioned the clients have like a session view page where they can see everything that you've saved in Aidos as part of that. So their pre-fit form, their post-fit form, intervention log and bike measurements, but also any tags that you've put on there, what they bought during the session, any other bookings that connect to that session. But what we could also, and any files that you've uploaded that relate to that. So they can see all of that in one place. But what would be great is if we can get to a point where, we automatically draw down a sort of report from these technology providers that saves in the little box of uploaded files. And then, it automates the process for the fitter, takes away some of that admin, makes the life a lot easier for the client, because literally 5 or 10 minutes after they walk out of your fit studio, by the time they've driven home, they can log in and see literally everything from the session.
Yes.
There's no delay, because it's all, you're saving stuff to a database, the client is accessing that same database. So it's instantaneous, really. But yeah, I tried to view Aidos in its creation as something that didn't compete with existing fit brands and tech providers, especially. So we do a very different job. I'm kind of record keeping and admin, and business operation as well, with the CRM, with the point of sale and stock tracking and all that side of things. It's not decision making in the fit particularly, although the forms do obviously inform that a little bit. It's not competing with the tech guys.
Awesome. AI, and everyone is, scary, excited at the same time. The future of bike fitting in 5-10 years, how do you see it?
So I use AI quite a lot in various elements of my job, and I think it's great at certain things, but it can't do other things. And I was watching a podcast a couple of days ago with a professor in the AI and these kinds of technologies, and he was basically saying that in 2 years, AI will replace, or have the capacity to replace, any job that is computer based or thought based. So not physical labor. But it'll only be 3 to 5 years after that where like robots and machines will replace the manual elements and be able to combine both. So you'll have the AI will be smarter than people, but it will also have the physical ability to walk around and interact with things the way we do. So, that's quite a scary thought, because that would reach a point where this guy was arguing that it could replace 99% of jobs. And literally the vast majority of people would be unemployed and just sort of sat at home. So that's kind of scary. But I think the robots replacing what we do, it is actually really 5, 10, maybe even 20 years away for bike fit, because it's just not a big enough market for anyone to put in the money that would be required to make the robot do that. Now AI replacing certain elements of the fit, I think I can see that happening, but all it will ever do is change how we as fitters do our jobs. So I think we'll become very contact point focused. We'll be the ones that set cleat position, set insoles and help with shoe. Same thing with seats and handlebars, but it won't be fit the way that we kind of view it now, because there'll be a lot of 3D printing, 3D scanning, and complete customization. So, you're not really going to have that wall of saddles behind you that a load of fitters have now and take pride in having like 50, 60, 100 saddles lined up on this wall. I think you're going to have kind of maybe 3 stock shells, and then you're going to 3D print the padding on top of that. Or maybe it'll be a bit more than that, but it's going to, completely change how we sell saddles. Especially insoles can go the same way pretty easily. And I don't think shoes necessarily are going to get to that point as quickly, but never say never. I think for the moment it's a little bit harder to 3D print and customize shoes, and that's why the brands that do it are so expensive, because it is a difficult thing to do. But who knows what's around the corner? Whether somebody's going to just crack that code and make a $2,000 shoe worth 200 quid. It's completely different.
Yeah.
But I think they'll always.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think there'll always be space for that human interaction piece, because there is a tactile element to fit. There is a
say that
compassion.
Yeah, that, like I heard the other day, you're not competing against AI, you're competing with AI as an aid, helping you out. That's the as I said, the tactile, the feeling of it. And I reckon it's gonna, help everyone else. Indeed, it is, scary, especially if you follow the news. You get, okay, I won't exist, in terms of producing anything anymore. Oh yeah. Anything else would you like to add today? I've got just a couple of questions. Just feel free.
I think we've covered kind of a lot of what I'm doing at the moment, and what I wanted to talk about. I think in a big part of mentoring and Aidos is this idea of decision making and making good decisions with the right information available to you. So I'll be doing a webinar on that in January through the IBFI, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And then the IBFI's conference at the end of February, I'll be presenting there as well on a similar topic. So they'll kind of all slightly linked together. And I really enjoy learning about decision making and how people make good choices. And that's kind of what these next 2 presentations are going to be about.
Fantastic. And you're in Spain, Valencia right now. If people want to, reach out, find you, how? Hello.
Sorry about that.
Nah, that's fine.
Hey, no.
Join us.
It's okay.
So how do people find you nowadays?
So you can go to aidos.fit, which is the website for Aidos. Andy-Brooke.com is my personal website for mentoring and consulting. You'll be able to contact me through either of those. And if you search for Aidos.fit on any of the social channels, you can find me on there as well. Same with personal. I think Andy Brooke is my handle. Andy Brooke 11 might be on Instagram. But yeah, you can find me and contact me in lots of places.
I'll put everything down below in the comment section. Also, everyone, feel free to send questions, comments. And Andy, I can't thank you enough for that. I have probably another 15 questions, but probably that's for another episode. I can't thank you enough. Great. Many thanks for your time, Andy. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I've really enjoyed it, and let me know when you want to do the next 15 questions. It's been a lot of fun.
Lovely. Thank you. Catch up soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.